Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today I've got some ingredients here. I'm going to be making some orange, lime, and rosemary salt. This is another one of my staples that we can use in a lot of different recipes, and I'm going to show you how to make that today. I've got a piece of parchment paper here on the cutting board that I'm going to be using to catch my zest, but you don't have to put that down. If you just want to use a bench scraper, you can scrape it right up off of your surface that you're doing that on. The one thing that we want to make sure that we're doing, because we are taking the zest off our limes and oranges, we want to make sure these are washed and clean, because we're going to be using the outside of it for our salt, and we don't want any impurities in here that we don't want in our salt. So I'm going to go ahead and start this process of zesting my limes and my oranges. And like I said, you just want to take long swoops with it. And when you do that, you don't want to get down into the very white of it, because it gets really bitter. And you can see here on my parchment paper that a lot does come off of it. And a lot of it will be on the back side of your microplaner too. So go ahead and do that and zest your limes and your oranges. And for this recipe today, I've got 4 limes and I've got 2 oranges. So I'm going to go ahead and zest these. We'll be doing the oranges the same way. And just make sure that when you do the oranges also, that we're not getting into that white part flesh of the skin. So I'll be back in just a minute and I'll show you what we're going to do next. All right, I am back and I've got my 4 limes zested. You can see how much I've got out of that. I've got that in this bowl. And now that I've got my lime zested, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my oranges. I'll be back in just a minute. All right, I am back and I've got my oranges zested now. As you can see that I'm just going to leave that on the sheet of paper, because I'm eventually going to be putting it into my dehydrator here. So I'm going to set this to the side. And my last ingredient that I'm going to be dehydrating today is I've got 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary. I really like the smell of rosemary, and this makes the salt just very aromatic. So what we're going to do is I need to take the leaves off of these. You don't want the stems in these, because we're going to be dehydrating this also. So you just want to kind of break everything apart. Break your little leaves of your rosemary up, and we definitely want to pull that off of the stem, because we don't want that into our dehydration. All right, so I've kind of broken these up. You can kind of see what I've done here with these, just in little bitty pieces. I'm going to go ahead and do these other 2 off camera, and I'll be back and we'll get started on to the next step. All right, I'm back and I've got my oranges, my lime zested, and I've got my rosemary here broken up, and I've got my dehydrator here. So in the past, I'd always use my dehydrator, because the stove that I had in the past, I could never get it to come down below 200 degrees, and you take a chance on burning everything. So you can dehydrate these things in this. But if your stove can get down to 150, 175, you can definitely use that instead. Just put this on a piece of parchment paper on a tray and put it in the oven on the lowest setting it can go. I wouldn't go any higher than 175, because you could take a chance on burning anything. But you can definitely put that in there and keep a watch on it. Check it at about 15 minutes, turn your trays around, take a knife or a spoon or something and kind of mix your zest around on your tray. That way you get an even drying on that. And then check it. It should take about 30-35 minutes, but everybody's stove cooks a little bit differently, and depending on what temperature you can get it down to, it might take a little bit longer. But I'm going to be using my dehydrator today, because I know this I can control. And so I've got 3 trays here in this, and I've got these little fine mesh screens that I've got on mine, and I'm going to be putting the lime zest on one, the orange on one, and the rosemary on the other one. That way, if one of them dries a little bit faster than the other one, I can remove that tray out of there, and the other ones don't burn because they're on the same tray. So that's just a little trick that I do. Put everything on individual trays, and as it gets dry, my oranges, I can tell by looking at these, have a lot more moisture in them than these limes do. So they're probably not going to take as long, these limes are, than my orange is. And depending on that too, the rosemary, how fresh that is. If it's really fresh and has a lot of moisture in it, it can take a little bit longer. So definitely try that. Put them on different trays. That way you can test them to see where you're at. So let's go ahead and get this loaded down. I'm going to kind of sprinkle this around as best as I can get it here, as thin as I can. And I might take my knife here in just a few minutes and just kind of run across the top of it. Go ahead and get all of that out of there. And this will just kind of break it up a little bit so that it's not all clumped together. And you can see here what it's doing. It's just kind of just moving everything around so that it spreads out evenly on that. You can use the back of a fork or a spoon, whatever you've got that you want to use. We just want to make sure that we get an even coating on this tray so that everything dries evenly on it. All right, so now that we've got our limes on here, let's go ahead to our oranges. And a little bit of that lime zest did come through that tray onto this, but that's okay. It'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and load this onto this tray. And you can see here there's a lot of moisture that's on this orange compared to that lime. So I can already tell this is going to take a little bit longer to dry than that lime zest is. So I'm going to see if I can't spread this out with my hands just a little bit. And then I'm going to come in with my knife and do the same thing and kind of break it up a little bit so that I can get it spread out on this tray. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's move on to our rosemary. And with this, I'm just going to kind of spread these leaves out on this tray evenly around so that they're not laying on the top of each other and they can get a good dehydration on these. I always love fresh ingredients. It makes everything taste so much better than the dry stuff that you can get in the store. All right, so I've got my items now in my dehydrator. I'm going to go ahead and put these back together, put the lid on it, and I'm going to put these on about 135, 140, and I'm going to be checking on these to see what they're going to be doing in about an hour. And I can always turn it up or turn it down if it's cooking a little bit too much, but already the smell of these ingredients in this house are just absolutely incredible. Nothing like using fresh herbs and fresh zest from the limes and the oranges to make this nice salt that we're going to be making today. So stick with me, come back, and I'll show you the other ingredients we're going to be using and how we're going to put this salt together. I'll see you later on. Bye. I am back, and I wanted to show you now what my zest looked like of my orange. So this has been an hour in my food dehydrator. It didn't take long for that to dehydrate at all. So this is the zest that I've got left of my orange. This is the zest I have of my limes. You can see what that looks like now. That's really dry. And then this is my rosemary here, what this looks like, how this turned out. So you definitely want to make sure that that is dry. So if there's any chance where you think it might not be dry, you can put this in a jar before you make these ingredients. Put it in a jar, put the lid on it, and if you see any moisture within the next 12 to 24 hours, you know you need to put it back in your dehydrator because this will not be shelf stable. If there's any moisture in it at all, you might get some mold and things in it. So you definitely want to make sure this is dry. So put it in a jar, let it sit for 12 to 24 hours before you put your other ingredients in there to make sure that this has really dried out. And if you hadn't, just stick it back in the food dehydrator again and you're set to go. Or if you used it in the oven, then put it back in the oven for just a few minutes longer and let it dry out some more. So I've got everything really dry. I can really tell that all the ingredients are all dried out. And one of the other ingredients I've got here is 1 tablespoon of peppercorn. I've got the whole peppercorns here, the black peppercorns. And then I've got a 1/3 cup of salt. So what I'm going to do, I've got my jar here ready to go. I've got my spice grinder, and I'm going to go ahead and put these ingredients together so that I can get these 4 ingredients mixed together, and then I'll put it into my salt, and we'll have a nice orange, lime, and rosemary salt. So I'm going to add in my zest of my oranges. Here's the zest of my limes. We'll add that in. Here's my rosemary that I dried. And then I've got my black peppercorns. We'll add all that into this grinder and we'll give it a little pulse through until everything gets combined together really nicely. All right, I want to just let you see what that looks like. Everything got combined together really nicely. So I have a funnel here that I'm going to put on the top of my jar. Makes it just a little bit easier for it to go into that. And we're going to dump that into the jar. Make sure we get every bit of that out of it. All right, now that we've got our 4 ingredients together in there, we're going to add our salt. And again, that's 1/3 cup. You put your airtight lid on it and just give it a shake to mix it together. There you go. You've got your orange, lime, rosemary salt ready to go. You can put this on the can shelf in an airtight container and it should last for up to 4 months on that. So definitely make this ahead of time. You can use this, like I said earlier, as a rub on chicken. You can use it for anything that you need any spices for. So give it a try. You might even put it in mashed potatoes. I think it might be really good in that with these different flavors in those. So definitely give this a try. I know you're going to love it. I'm going to be making some biscuits with mine in the future. So I got this made ahead. Check out that video when it comes up of my biscuits, and I'll be using these spices in there. So check that out when it comes out. If you like this content, maybe you might consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And check out one of these other 2 videos over here. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Try this seasoning out. Let me know what you think about it. And if you've made something like this before, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. And if you've never made it before, definitely let me know how it turned out for you and what you're using it for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye now.